3 spine-chilling horror tales revealing terrifying secrets of being alone at work after dark. Sarah peered around the darkened corners of the Crestwood Public Library, her heart racing. The clock struck midnight, echoing off the dust-laden shelves. She shivered, feeling an unshakable chill coil around her spine. Her routine late-night shifts were usually a refuge, but tonight, the shadows felt alive, inching closer. Flickers of movement danced just beyond her line of sight, a quiet reminder that she wasn't as alone as she'd hoped. And then her phone buzzed, the local news blaring a chilling report: local predator on the loose. Sarah dismissed it, telling herself the old library's soft warmth would protect her. But dread rooted itself deep within her as she turned another page of the book, convinced the creeping darkness was hiding something sinister. Derek, the janitor at the abandoned high school, had always felt like a ghost himself, wandering through the empty halls. It had been years since the school echoed with life, leaving behind only whispers of laughter and memories frozen in time. But something felt different tonight. The flickering lights overhead cast an unsettling glow. Shadows flitted around him, the sound of something skimming against the lockers resonating like nails on a chalkboard. As he mopped the floor, he recalled his grandmother's tales of a teacher's spirit who roamed these very halls. He shook it off until a photograph slipped from the darkness, revealing haunting eyes that seemed to call out for help. Every hair on his neck stood on end as he felt an icy fingers of dread wrap around his throat. All the while, Lila sat alone in the sterile corridors of Crestwood Community Hospital, the weight of silence pressing against her. Night shifts could be lonely, but she always found comfort in the bustle of her colleagues. Tonight, however, the air felt heavy, thick with unspoken secrets. The clinic had been oddly vacant, a place designed to heal now feeling like a tomb. Whispers tainted the atmosphere. Her colleagues murmured suspicions about her work ethic floated like phantoms around her. And then, a breath close. Too close. Fear twisted in her gut as she braced herself against the reality that she could be the target of a hidden betrayal. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the clock struck 3, the tensions reached a boiling point. Sarah froze, horrified as she spotted her boss lurking among the darkened shelves, eyes gleaming with an unnerving intensity. Derek stumbled into a hidden room, revealing lost photographs and diary entries that revealed the school's dark history. Lila's breath caught in her throat as she overheard whispers on the intercom, derisive comments laced with mistrust. The three of them, each standing at the edge of fear, were bound by the night's horrors. It felt inevitable, the understanding that the secrets festering in the shadows were not just personal, they were woven into the very fabric of their tight-knit community. The rising sun would soon expose the truth lurking within the darkness. But as dawn broke, would they be ready to confront the chilling reality that sometimes, the greatest monsters wore familiar faces? The clock ticked ominously. Sarah's heart pounded as her eyes darted back to the shadowy figure, her boss stepping forward, face obscured in gloom. Was he here to check on her, or did he know more than he let on? The once cozy library morphed into a prison, each aisle stretching into a labyrinth of dread. She squinted, trying to discern his expression, but it was as if the darkness swallowed him whole, only his eyes lit with that eerie glint. "What are you doing here, Mr. Harris?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. The shadows around him seemed to flicker like flame, swallowing her question whole. "Just checking on my favorite librarian," he murmured, a smile dancing on his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. Suddenly, the air felt heavy, thick with unsaid words. She backed away, her palms clammy as the bookshelves pressed in around her. Meanwhile, Derek found himself standing in the hidden room, clutching the photograph with trembling hands. The faces of the students had been neatly crossed out, a sinister mark of death that sent chills racing down his spine. No longer ghosts of memory, they felt real and threatening. Shadows shifted once more, forming a figure behind him. He turned quickly, heart racing, only to glimpse nothing, just the floating dust and the faint light from a single bulb overhead. "Get it together," he muttered to himself, forcing one foot in front of the other. But a moan cut through the silence, low and mournful. He followed the sound, stepping deeper into the room, the walls whispering secrets untold. Was it the teacher's spirit, or was it something much worse? His skin prickled as he felt an unseen presence, but he had to know. Lila's breaths quickened as she leaned closer to the intercom, desperately picking out the whispers that layered over one another, like murky water concealing a treacherous depth. "She'll pay for what she did," one voice sneered, followed by another. "The truth will come out, just like before." The pieces clicked together, each voice a knife twisting deeper. Was she truly the target of some dark plot? With trembling hands, she pressed the intercom button, desperation gripping her. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered her, thick and suffocating. Then, a small, raspy voice echoed in response. "Help us." Fear surged through her, igniting every nerve as she stared blankly ahead, imagining the hundreds of empty beds holding those who should have been awake to help her. What happened to them? What horrors waited for her in the safe haven that now loomed as a tomb? Suddenly, the hour hand moved to 4, and an unseen tension filled the air, drawing all three to the brink of revelation. Shadows enveloped Sarah in the library, while Derek's fears took form in the corners of the school, and Lila faced the darkened whispers of betrayal in the hospital halls. As they each teetered on the edge of discovery, the realization dawned: the fate of more than just their evenings rested in the shadows. When the truth finally emerged, would they still be standing, or would the spectral remnants of their places of work claim them as their own? A chilling sound reverberated through the library, high-pitched and unnatural. Echoes of laughter blended with cries of despair reached Lila's ears. The air was electric, crackling with the energy of unresolved pain. And just when Sarah thought it was over, a voice floated through the aisles: "You haven't figured it out yet, have you?" What revelation awaited them in the depths of the night? Would they uncover the secrets lurking in the darkness, or would they succumb to the terror that had haunted their workspaces? Sarah's breath turned shallow as the voice echoed through the library, curling around her like a serpent. Fear clawed at her chest, and she felt her heart tremble in response. The aisles, once familiar, morphed into dark tunnels of threat, stretching infinitely as if daring her to venture deeper into the horror that lurked within. "Who's there?" she called back, her voice wavering but rising with a rebellious spark of courage. No answer came, only the relentless ticking of the clock, mocking her with each echoing tick-that-mr. Harris stepped closer, the darkness twisting around him like a shroud. "You need to understand, Sarah," he said, his voice smooth and sinister, "there are things you are better off not knowing." The shadows seemed to dance at his feet, and for a moment, she thought she heard them whisper her name. She backed away until her back hit the shelf, the cold wooden surface sending a shiver through her. "You're not here to check on me," she accused, the fear giving way to defiance. "You know something." His smile widened, but it didn't bring her comfort. The past has a way of catching up with those who dig too deeply. "You're digging, aren't you?" Meanwhile, Derek wandered deeper into the hidden room, absorbing the weight of the haunting presence. He could feel the temperature drop, the air heavy with dread. "What do you want?" he called out, half expecting an answer that could shatter his already fraying nerves. That low, mournful moan returned, swirling through the air like smoke. Was it a call for help or a warning? His instincts screamed at him to run, to flee the haunting whispers clawing at the corners of his sanity. But curiosity held him captive. He needed to know. What he found next was the very essence of horror, a mirror. Not a regular one, but one that seemed to pulse and breathe as he approached. His reflection began to morph, shifting into horrific faces he recognized from the photograph he'd found. They were the faces of the students, twisted shapes of agony staring back at him, mouths opening in silent screams. Panic shot through him. Had they come for him, too? Elsewhere, Lila stood frozen at the hospital intercom, the raspy voice still sending tremors through her body. "Help us," it echoed in her mind like a cursed melody. Suddenly, her instincts kicked and she wasn't just a spectator, she was part of this, part of whatever was lurking in the darkness. "Who are you?" Lila whispered, her voice trembling. "What happened to you?" "No one gets out," the voice responded, colder than the chill creeping through the hospital corridors. "Not without paying the price." With every heartbeat, her thoughts raced. Did they know something specific about her? Was there a connection she had overlooked? Just then, the flickering lights above her began to flicker violently, plunging her into darkness, and with it came the cool press of fear wrapping around her throat. Each of them was now caught in the web of terror tightening around their lives, each revelation unraveling more than it tied together. As shadows crawled closer, the thought that they were not alone became a reality. They exchanged an unspoken bond, fear, while the past, bloodied and resentful, clawed its way back into the present. That a resounding crash shook the library, rattling the shelves as books tumbled to the ground. Panic ignited in Sarah as she turned to see the unseen force manifest, a shadowy figure emerging from the dark, a familiar shape patterned over the chaos of the library. It smiled with malicious intent, and in that moment, threads of past and present intertwined, creating a tapestry of terror. Just as she was about to scream, the figure lunged toward her, and everything went black. What would become of Sarah, Derek, and Lila? Would they become part of the forgotten, trapped in their own fears, or could they fight back in this twisted game of survival? The shadows were closing in, and the truth was waiting, just out of reach. Sarah awoke to an unbearable weight pressing down on her chest. The air around her was thick, like molasses, heavy with dust and something rotting. Panic surged as she realized she was not alone. Shadows writhed in the dim light as she tried to focus. "Derek!" she rasped, her voice cracking like ICE. No response came. Only the relentless echo of her quiet despair lingered in the silence, blending with the subtle rustle of unseen things slipping through the darkness. Then, she remembered. The dark figure. It was here, somewhere in this library haunted by its own history. She struggled to sit up, pushing against the heavy air. A sudden crash from the back of the library made her jump, heart thunderously quickening in her chest. What could it be? Was it Derek? Maybe Lila? She pushed herself to her feet, each movement sending jolts of pain through her body. The shadows seemed to retreat, only to swirl back in as she took her first shaky steps. "Derek! Lila!" She called again, her voice barely above a whisper. A low chuckle danced through the aisles, wrapping around her and squeezing. "You're all alone, Sarah," a voice whispered, sweet and deceptive like a poisoned flower. "They can't help you now." Her breath hitched. "Shut up. Get away from me," she cried, more defiance in her words than she felt inside, but with each burst of courage, more shadows seemed to settle in, drawing near. Panic ignited within her once more. She turned sharply, aiming for the exit, but every way she faced throbbed with despair. Outside of her desperate realm, Derek too was ensnared in horror's grip. The mirror loomed before him like an abyss, the faces inside warping and writhing as if they were alive. He took a step back, heart racing wildly. "No. No," he whispered, but the mirror called to him, a siren song filled with anguish. They were trapped. What did they want? Images flooded his mind. Those faces, the students. Had they found a way to escape? Were they warning him, judging him for standing where they couldn't anymore? With a surge of determination, he turned his back on the cursed glass, feeling the weight of their stares boring into his soul. He had to find Sarah and Lila. They needed one another now more than ever. The gallery of shadows around him shifted, wheeling in an almost encouraging cycle, urging him forward, deeper into the suffocating darkness. Meanwhile, Lila groped her way through the flickering hospital halls. The pulse of darkness was thick, and the whispers swirled like smoke, swirling through her mind. "Help us," they moaned, echoes of agony that felt intimately familiar. Why are you doing this? Lila pleaded, her hands trembling. What do you want? Remember the price, the voice replied, sharp and chilling. You know the sacrifice. Lila's heart sank into cold dread. Was she meant to become another victim? The lights flickered wildly above her, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls, forming nightmares too grotesque to confront. Get out! Get out! She urged herself, rushing toward the first exit she could find. But desperation pushed her to the brink, and she wasn't sure she had the strength left to fight. In the library, Sarah pieced together her thoughts amid the chaos. The figure was close, she could feel it lingering, lurking just out of sight. Suddenly, a bone-chilling realization gripped her. What if the past wasn't just reaching for her? What if the weight of the truth was meant to drag them all down together? The shadows crept closer, breaths mingling with dread, her past reawakening, wrapping tight like a noose. Then a deafening roar burst through the stillness, forcing her to scream. The sound echoed until it suddenly transformed, morphing into a cacophony of voices. Join us! The library shuddered, as everything fell into a deafening silence that held a promise of pain. Would she give in and become one with them? Unearthing the truth behind their fate could be her only chance, or would it seal her doom? The darkness deepened, and she fought to take a step toward the truth, but the shadows closed in tight, ready to ensnare her once more. Was there still hope in the chaos, or would she lose herself in the whispers of the forgotten? Sarah felt her throat tighten as the whispers grew louder, soft and insistent, like a dark hymn singing her fate. The shadows surged around her, painting the dim library in swirling shapes of despair. Panic clawed at her chest. She had to escape, but the deeper she went into the decaying library, the harder it became to breathe. Derek! Lila! She called again, desperation coloring her voice. But the shadows laughed, a sound that curled around her like smoke. They can't hear you, the voice danced through the air, each word slithering into her mind. They belong to us now. She stumbled back, her foot catching on a loose book, sending it crashing to the floor. The sound reverberated, but instead of silence, it drew more whispers. No escape, no escape. The silence was broken only by the rhythmic thumping of her heart, drowning out the cries for help. Desperation flickered her mind like a candle nearing its end. Who were these things? What did they want with her? What price did Lila have to pay? Would Derek even make it back to her? An icy sensation brushed against her arm, sending her skin prickling. She turned sharply, eyes searching the gloom. There, just beyond the shelves, she distinguished a form, partially obscured. A hand, pale, bony, slender, reached out, beckoning her closer. Come closer, Sarah, it whispered, inviting and repulsive all at once. Her breath came out in short bursts. You're not alone. You never were. Lurching forward, she ran, heart racing. But the library seemed to lengthen, each aisle stretching, twisting, elongating into an infinite maze. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the walls, mocking her every fear. Where was the exit? She could almost see it, a faint glimmer at the end of a hallway. That tiny light held hope. Yet as she sprinted toward it, shadowy figures began to manifest in her peripheral vision, flitting, shifting, closing in Derek's world. Each step he took felt like wading through thick mud. He stumbled through the collapsing hallways, thoughts swirling with panic. He couldn't lose them. He couldn't be another victim. The mirror's reflection taunted him, showing visions of his friends reaching out, trapped within their own terror, faces etched in agony. The sound of breaking glass filled the air behind him as he pushed through a heavy door, into a corridor. Climbing screams echoed from ahead. Was it Sarah? Confusion and fear whipped through him. He felt the muscles in his legs burning, moving now on sheer adrenaline. Lila pressed deeper into the hospital, the air saturated with suffocating dread. A chill crawled down her spine. The darkness swirled almost playfully now, whispers laughing softly, you know the sacrifice. What do you want from me? She pleaded, refusing to yield to the rise of despair. I won't give in. Suddenly, lights flickered violently around her, illuminating twisted figures lining the narrow hall. Each face was scarred, tear-streaked, unblinking. They reached for her, hands grasping for something far beyond her physical form. Join us, they intoned in a chilling chorus. Lila's pulse quickened, racing in syncopation with an overwhelming sense of doom. They weren't just shadows. They were memories. They were the lost souls, remnants of sacrifices past, clawing through the veils of time to reclaim what was theirs. As Sarah caught a glimpse of light flickering ahead, she pushed through the darkness with everything she had. Shouldering past the encroaching shadows, she leaped forward into the open space only to find herself in a dark room where echoing laughter collided with her despair. "Welcome, Sarah. Are you ready to join us?" The voice coiled around her, heavier than the dense air, wrapping her in a shroud of inevitable truth, and then she understood the past didn't just haunt her, it waited to claim her. Was it déjà vu that brought Derek to the door he once swore had sealed behind him, or was it a terrible twist of fate? The moment stalled, the shadows closing in, waiting for their next meal. Sarah took a shuddering breath, standing at the precipice of choice. Would she fight against the shadows that promised escape, or give in to their allure and become a part of the darkness? The looming quiet was broken only by her racing heartbeat, echoing the distant cries of her friends. She needed more than courage now. She needed to uncover the truth buried in the darkness before it swallowed them all whole. But the shadows moved closer still, inching their way toward her, thirsting for the next sacrifice. What would happen when the clock struck midnight? Who would be claimed first in this night of reckoning? Sarah's heart pounded, a wild drum in the silence. The shadows drew nearer, their forms pooling and stretching like ink spilled across a page. She felt their hunger waiting, breathing it in as if it were part of the dust in the air. Panic fought with stubborn defiance as she stared into the growing darkness. "Stay back!" she screamed, her voice crackling in the oppressive air. The whispers grew louder, mocking her resolve. "You can't fight what you are, Sarah." But what was she? She couldn't let them consume her, couldn't give in to their twisted lullaby. She pushed through the palpable fear, searching madly for something, anything that could bring her back to reality. The flickering light kept calling her, a beacon in the storm. It was a promise, a chance. She bolted toward it, the shadows snarling, their whispers turning desperate as they reached. "Join us. We are here to help you." The light flickered again, seeming to pulse like a heartbeat, urging her to come closer. When she finally broke through the shroud of darkness, she stumbled into a small reading room. The light hung in the air like a thin veil, illuminating the space with an eerie glow. Books adorned the walls, their spines cracked, the titles indecipherable. Yet at the center of the room stood a table, old and worn, covered with symbols she barely recognized. They seemed alive, moving in a dance of whispers that filled her ears. "Find the truth." A different voice drifted through, smoother, more inviting. It slithered into her consciousness like a silken thread. "Decipher the symbols, they tell your story." She hesitated, every fiber of her being urging her to leave. But curiosity pulled her closer to the table. With trembling fingers, she traced one of the symbols. A cold shock buzzed through her, like electricity coursing beneath her skin. Visions erupted in her mind. Flashes of terror and anguish filled her thoughts. Derek, Lila, all wrapped in their own despair. Each face contorted, begging while locked in an invisible cage. She had to do something, she couldn't just leave them. "Help us, Sarah," their voices harmonized, rising from the depths. "You have the power." As she traced more symbols, her thoughts flickered from her friends to the shadows lurking just outside this sanctuary of light. The symbols were familiar, they were the whispers she had heard since entering the library, promises and threats intertwined. "Do you wish to know the truth?" The voice whispered again, closer now. It beckoned, urging her to uncover what lay beneath. "The shadows have their price." What price? Was she ready for that? But Derek was still out there, Lila was counting on her. Fear wrapped around her heart, tightening its grip. Outside, the shadows twitched, restless, as if they sensed her hesitation. "Time is running out, Sarah. Choose our path, or be swallowed whole." With a deep breath, she pushed her mind against the symbols, surrendering to the shadows that threatened to claim her. In that moment, their intentions coalesced like a collapsing star, ready to explode into revelation. Across the library, Derek burst into the reading room, breathless and torn, despair etched across his features. "Sarah! Where are you?" The desperation of his voice cut through the looming terror, but before she could respond, the shadows surged forward, their sweeping tendrils reaching, longing for the new presence that had appeared, hungry for more. They were coming for both of them. Each second felt like an eternity as time stuttered. Where was the escape? Would understanding the symbols offer salvation, or was it merely drawing them deeper into the darkness? "Derek! The symbols!" Sarah called, panic lacing her words. They could. Before she could finish, the shadows wrapped around Derek, pulling him as he shouted her name one last time. His figure began to dissolve into the very darkness they had fought against. "Join us," they crooned, voices entwined in a cacophony of temptation. Fear clawed at her throat, shadows were all around, drowning out any hope of escape, enveloping the last light in their desperate attempt to claim them. As echoes of laughter reverberated throughout the library, Sarah realized she faced not just a choice between light and dark but the horror of finding out exactly what the shadows had planned for her and her friends. The clock continued to tick, each second punctuated by Derek's fading cries. What was the truth she was meant to discover, and could she face whatever lay ahead before it was too late? The shadows recoiled, their tendrils snapping back like a frayed wire, startled by the vulnerability Derek had exposed. But they weren't finished. Not yet. Sarah's heart raced as her mind spun, caught in the chaos of dread and despair. She barely registered her friend being engulfed, his last cry hanging in the air like a ghostly echo. Faced with the weight of knowledge and the horrors it unveiled, she called out, "Derek!" There was no response. Only the flicker of lights fading and swelling, taunting her with their insistent rhythm. The weight of the air thickened, palpable, as if the library itself intended to swallow her whole. "Dare to learn, Sarah," the softer voice purred closer now. "The truth lies within the darkness." The symbols on the table heightened in intensity, glowing with an eerie light that seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own. She stepped closer, feeling drawn to the power that hummed beneath her fingertips. They promised answers, a way to fight back against the shadows and potentially save her friends, if it wasn't too late. Instinctively, she hovered her hand above the various symbols, a mix of dread and determination swirling inside her. "What do you want?" she shouted into the emptiness, desperate. A shadow laughed softly in response, the sound curling around her. "What do we want?" "Oh, sweet Sarah. We want you. Don't you long to be free of pain? To know your destiny?" Torn between dread and hope, she began tracing the faintest of symbols on the table, the air crackling around her. The shadows seemed to writhe, eager and hungry for a fractured piece of her spirit. They coaxed her, and their seductive whispers joined forces once more, rising up like a tide. "Look beyond, lean into it," they howled in unison. Their voices, no longer merely a chant, became a melody of twisted requiems. What were they offering? An escape? A chance to save Derek? She squeezed her eyes shut, picturing her friends' faces, Lila's laughter, Derek's fierce loyalty. "Tell me." She was shouting now, anger rising. "What is the price?" "Sacrifice will always be demanded," the voice coiled around her thoughts like smoke. "Your pain will ease, but you must lose something in return. Embrace the shadows, they will show you." Suddenly, a vibrating pulse shot through her palms as the symbols began to pulse in time with her racing heart. The table surged with energy, lifting as though it desired to connect directly with her soul. Each flicker offered a glimpse into the abyss where secrets writhed and reality twisted. A flash of Derek's last moment sent a cold shiver coursing through her. She had to act. "What do I need to do?" she cried. The shadows pulled back, the whispers fading into a haunting silence, and then a figure materialized from the gloom, an outline of Derek, eyes hollow, mouth drawn tight. "Sarah, you have to choose," he murmured, sounding like a long-lost echo from a forgotten dream. "They'll take everything. But you can use it against them too." "Derek?" she whispered, reaching towards him as tears began to blur her sight. A creeping dread tightened around her throat as the shadows thickened around him, resilient against her outstretched hand. "Find the truth, before they do. You're our only chance." With that, the darkness surged over him in a whirl of black mist, resonating with a cacophony of tormented screams. She staggered backward, her mind racing. Sarah's willpower flickered, a lone candle in a gale. In that moment, the library felt alive, vibrating with ancient knowledge. Would she decipher the symbols and plunge into the depths with no promise of rescue? Scenarios tumbled in her mind, the weight of decision suffocating her. Outside, shadows twisted, echoing with desperate hunger, while she felt the glare of unseen eyes watching her unravel. And then, with resolve hardening in her chest, she shouted once more, "I will find the truth." As the last word left her lips, the symbols flared bright, illuminating the room, dimming the oppressive darkness only a fraction. But it drew a reaction from the shadows, an angry roar that threatened to consume her. Would she unlock the secrets waiting within, or would she become yet another lost soul in the library's endless darkness? With a final gasp, she felt the ground beneath her tremble. The chase had begun. And she could feel the shadows, alive and thirsty, closing in around her fast. What awaited her in the abyss, the truth or eternal damnation? A new cycle of horror beckoned, one where the consequences of curiosity would echo indefinitely. The room exploded with light, a sudden shockwave that sent Sarah reeling. The symbols danced and throbbed, a rhythm that pulsed in her veins. Shadows hissed and morphed, coiling closer, taunting her as they beckoned with fingers of darkness. "Join us, Sarah. Accept your fate." Their voices were a dissonance of despair, clamoring inside her head, urging her to abandon her free will. Breath quickening, she took a step backward, but it felt futile. The walls seemed to shift, closing in, thick and heavy. The table still pulsed, a living entity, thrumming beneath her fingertips in a hypnotic dance. She diverted her gaze, the outline of Derek's figure fading, dorsal to the ink-black chaos surrounding her. "What is happening?" she gasped, words cracking like broken glass. "Your reality is unraveling," the shadows chorused, their voices merging into one low whisper. "The truth and lies entwined in an eternal struggle. Find the balance, or succumb. I need to save him." She could barely hear herself over the cacophony, pleading with the shrieking void. The table blazed, and suddenly, she realized what it demanded. Interpret the symbols, reveal their hidden meanings. Dig deeper. What if this was a riddle of ancient knowledge that could unlock the key to defeating the shadows? Hands trembling, she pressed her palms to the cool surface, searching for a gateway in the glowing symbols, her blood singing with the energy around her. She could almost feel their story, waiting to spill forth a tragic tale steeped in darkness, yearning for life. "Dare you unlock the funeral corridors?" The shadows hissed, their cold breath crawling over her skin. "To resurrect the lost? Let him go!" she screamed, voice ringing with desperation. The haunted whispers were a swarm now, biting, gnawing at her sanity. She felt their desperation. They wanted her fear, her anguish, yet beneath that, a flicker of purpose ignited. "Tell me how. What do I need to know?" The air grew heavier, and for a fleeting moment, the shadows fell silent, as if waiting, evaluating her resolve. In a sudden flash, her mind was suffused with images, snatches of a forgotten pact made long ago, one that intertwined lives in darkness. She recalled stories of sacrifices, each one a piece of light stolen from despair. It hit her, hard. The key wasn't just to decipher symbols, it was about the meaning behind them. "Sacrifice," she whispered, horror dawning. "Wise girl," the shadows crooned, delight curling around their words. "Your sacrifice, the essence of your being, will guide the way." Stop. A realization gripped her, you're feeding on our pain. But they only laughed, a sinister sound echoing through the library. She felt the weight of their gaze, felt Derek slip further and further away. Instinct urged her to back away, but the symbols throbbed, all-consuming, drawing her in. She could almost hear Derek's voice, a faint echo nestled within the chaos. Find the truth, Sarah. The light dimmed, as if recognizing the battle within her mind. Shadows lapped like fire around her, eager for surrender, and still, a corner of her heart screamed against them. With renewed fury, she spat, I will never be your puppet. In that defiance, a crescendo built. The shadows screeched, and an unseen force pushed against her, testing her resolve. The glow flickered, the symbols dimmed as though fearing her strength. Foolish girl, they howled in chorus. But she dared to clutch the fading light, focusing her will on it. Would she wield the truth as a weapon or allow the shadows to corrupt her? As she surged toward the symbols again, the library rattled and roared, shaking with the energy around her. The air crackled like lightning, and with one final howl, the shadows surged towards her, ready to consume her whole. Tell me the truth, Sarah shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos, but as soon as she spoke, something shifted within the symbols, illuminating something dark and chilling, a truth she could never have anticipated. The shadows quickened, urgency in their response. You will regret this, and within the barrage of light and shadows, something shattered, darkness spilling forth as reality began to warp ferociously. Would she stand firm or let herself be lost forever amidst the truth she desperately sought? The ground trembled beneath her, and just as she steadied herself, a piercing scream echoed, not from Derek, but from the very heart of the library itself. What terror awaited her next, hidden in the labyrinth of twisting shadows? The room spun wildly, the shadows now vivid and tangible, their whispers clawing at her sanity. Sarah gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. The air thickened, suffocating her breath, wrapping around her like a vice. Memories sparked in her mind, images of Derek, laughing, carefree, radiant. She couldn't lose that light to this void. The symbols flickered, revealing horrifying images of those lost, faces distorted by anguish. They were sacrifices, just like you might be, a voice hissed from the depths. A flash of a woman's face, a victim? A sacrificed soul? It was all too confusing. Sarah stumbled back, nearly crashing into the shelves, books crashing down, their spines cracking. Do you feel their pain? The shadows danced around her, their forms curling in a grotesque ballet. Every soul must pay a tribute. Will it be yours? She felt it, a cold grip tightening around her heart. The very essence of her being was caught in a tempest of their making. No. This can't be the end. She shouted, her voice a mere whisper against the rising tide of despair. Suddenly, a piercing shriek cut through the cacophony, a sound so raw and filled with torment that it shook her core. Derek! Her heart screamed as she spun, scanning the swirling mass, searching for any sign of him. Join us, Sarah. The light will take you. The shadows beckoned, their laughter echoing off the walls, a macabre chorus. She could see flickers of Derek's figure fading and reappearing behind the pulsing darkness, a lifeline slipping away. What could she sacrifice? Her mind raced her dreams. A piece of herself? Or perhaps something deeper? Only when you balance the truths can you emerge. The shadows taunted. The symbols throbbed in response, each pulse whispering fragments of twisted histories beneath the surface, powers beyond comprehension, locked in an ancient war. Stop. She slammed her hand against the table, suddenly desperate for control. The symbols shone brighter, shards of white light striking through the darkness, forcing the shadows back, if only momentarily. They screeched, a sound like nails on glass, and for a fleeting moment, she felt hope blossom within her. If deciphering their riddle was key, she needed to understand what held value to the shadows. Derek! She shouted again, her voice echoing defiantly. What do I need to know? As if in response, the air shifted. Each symbol fired off visions she barely registered, images of sacrifice, choices made in desperation and greed. One stood out, a figure in front of a mirror, slowly morphing into the shadows around her. And what of the chosen one? A whisper slithered into her ear, chilling. Would you pay for him? Would you pay your own light? No. She felt the energy swell, her mind racing with anger and dread, a dizzying mixture that threatened to consume her. An unyielding fire rose within her, propelling her forward. I'll never become like you. With sheer will, she began to piece the symbols together, focusing on the one that resonated most with her. The truth about darkness, not about despair, but about the strength that could be derived from confronting it. Your power lies in resistance. The shadows screamed, the vibrations shaking the library like an earthquake. They twisted and shrieked, thrashing violently against the barriers she instinctively conjured. Through the turmoil, Derek's voice penetrated her thoughts. Fight for the truth, Sarah. I'm still here. Just as hope sparked within her, the ground beneath her shook violently. The staggering force knocked her off balance, and she felt herself falling, the table slipping from her grasp, the symbols blurring into chaos. Before she could even scream, darkness engulfed her, the truth she sought spiraling out of reach. Then, an unbearable silence layered over the chaos, too thick to breathe. And somewhere deep in that silence, she heard it, a distant whispering, the cold laughter returning, echoing with a terrifying finality. Welcome, to your reckoning. What would she unleash by awakening the buried truths? And would it spell salvation or doom for her and Derek? In that haunting stillness, Sarah faced the shadows, alone, wondering what the price of truth would ultimately cost. As Sarah fell into the enveloping darkness, her heart raced with terror and determination. The shadows swirled around her, whispering promises of despair and power. But deep inside, she clung to the flicker of hope, the knowledge that she could face the darkness. Derek! She cried, searching within the void for any sign of him, focusing on the warmth of their shared memories. His laughter echoed faintly, a reminder that they weren't just victims, but fighters against these sinister forces. Shadows writhed around her, shrieking in agony, sensing her resolve, and yet she felt a pulse of strength rise within her, a surge against surrender. Join us. A voice called, seductive and insidious. Become one with us. No. She shouted defiantly, forcing her way to the surface of her thoughts. I want to become what you want. I'm not afraid of you. Suddenly, the darkness recoiled, surprised by her fierce spirit. She felt a shift, an opening, a fraction of light breaking through the oppressive shadows. The symbols on the table glowed brightly, nearly blinding in their intensity. They began to shift and rearrange, forming a pattern that revealed a hidden truth, one she had been unknowingly navigating all along. Truth lies in rejection. The whispering shadows wailed. Don't choose pain over peace. But with every ounce of her will, she pushed onward, tracing the pulse of the symbols with her fingers, aligning their meanings, willing them to show her the way. Flashes of their history filled her mind, the sacrifices made, the students lost, Derek's unwavering loyalty, each brought forth the knowledge of what needed to be done. Derek needs me. She shouted, her voice rising against the storm. We're stronger when we stand together. The shadows writhed in protest, but their thrumming intensity began to fade as Sarah embraced the meaning of the symbols. They revealed snippets of a forgotten pact. The ghosts were not just tormentors, they were lost souls, yearning for recognition, for release from the grip of their despair. Remember your friends. The shadows hissed, their sounds mingling with sorrow. They are part of your choice. And with that, clarity washed over Sarah, sharp and bright. The thirst for vengeance drove the shadows, but they could be undone through understanding, through sacrifice that wasn't just her own pain but the release of burdens she had taken upon herself. Suddenly, Derek's presence surged within her again, stronger this time, drawing her back from the brink. Sarah. It was a call for action, for truth, a reminder that they could forge their own destiny. Fight against it together. With a newfound determination, she raised her voice in a powerful rebellion. You can't claim me. My truth is stronger than your hunger. At that moment, the shadows faltered, their forms wavering as her defiance cracked the facade of their control. The effects rippled through the library, rattling the walls. Balance the light and the dark, she thought, channeling Derek's essence with the resolve of their friendship. Let us both break free. As she focused, she felt the symbols pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. They illuminated the room one final time, and with a great exhale, she joined the bright energy of hope flowing through her. The shadows screeched and thrashed, the fabric of their reality beginning to tear apart. Together, forever. She screamed, and the words burst into a blinding light that surged forward, expanding until it enveloped the shadows, the dark whispers consumed by a symbol of unity, drawing in the lost souls and granting them peace. Then, silence fell like a curtain. Sarah blinked, eyes adjusting to the dim light of the reading room. She was alone but felt an undeniable presence surrounding her. The air was lighter, freer, releasing the last echoes of despair. Suddenly, Derek appeared, slightly translucent but radiant, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. You did it, Sarah. You freed them. Tears filled her eyes as she rushed to him, embracing the warmth of their bond. I thought I lost you. You fought, Derek replied. Softly, his presence vibrant and alive. You showed us what we needed to see. With that, the library shifted around them, the oppressive atmosphere lifting like a heavy fog. It was no longer a prison but a sanctuary, filled with the whispers of gratitude from the spirits they reclaimed. They exited together, light spilling into the once darkened corners, healing the scars left on their hearts. As they stepped into the new dawn, Sarah turned to Derek, knowing they faced the world differently now, unburdened, united, and ready to face whatever shadows dared return. Legacies of sorrow were now transformed into stories of resilience, their laughter echoing softly, a promise that they would always stand with the light of friendship beside them. And as the sun broke over the horizon, illuminating their path, Sarah vowed to remember the truth they had fought for, a declaration that darkness could never win if they lived with courage, love, and togetherivity. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss every spine-chilling tale that awaits. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm with your enthusiasm. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories. What do you think of Sarah and Derek's journey? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see and feel the power of true connection. Your support means everything in bringing these stories to life.